Hello and welcome to the Game Changers podcast, where you'll hear from trailblazing, fearless women in sport. I'm Sue Anstis, a founding trustee of the Women's Sport Trust charity and the founder and CEO of Promote PR, one of Britain's leading sports PR agencies. In this episode, you'll hear from Clare Connor CBE, former England cricket captain and now much respected Managing Director for Women's Cricket at the ECB. On Clare's watch, the women's team were awarded professional contracts. Increased sponsorships led to a new competitive structure, and the England women won the World Cup in front of packed stands at Lord's. And it was at Lord's, the home of cricket, that I sat down to talk with Clare. I began by asking her if she could remember the first time she saw women playing cricket.
Oh, not for ages, not until well into my teens, actually. So all my, everything that was visible to me and everything that I watched on television and knew about was men and boys playing cricket. My own experiences, very much started as a little girl playing in a team of boys at the age of 7 or 8. And that was my experience, that was my constant experience until into my mid-teens. So I grew up, I've got a younger brother, but he's 10 years younger than me. So I was essentially an only child for 10 years. And all my early playing experiences and experiences of the game, all around me were of it being a game for men and boys. And I think that I discovered women's cricket when I was in the summer of 1993. So I was 16, nearly 17. Well, that was when I think I first became aware that there was an England women's team that, played at grounds such as this at Lord's Cricket Ground when they won the World Cup final here at Lord's against New Zealand. A couple of years before then, I had trialled for Sussex girls and the Sussex women's team. So I suppose that's when I first started playing in girls and women's teams, but I had no idea, I had no clue of the structures or the pathways or what was possible until really I saw that England women's win in 1993 in the World Cup.
And what was it about that drew you to cricket? Did you play other sports when you were at school?
I did, yeah. I played lots of ball sports, so I played a lot of hockey and squash. I didn't like netball very much. I didn't like the standing still bit. So I played lots of cricket, hockey and squash. And what drew me to it, I've been asked that so many times, and I don't know if it was nature or nurture, but I just do remember being very, very little and listening to my family tell me stories of almost as soon as I was a toddler and I could run around, I was dragging a cricket bat that was far too big for me to do anything with, but I was just really attached to it. And I can remember from a really young age sitting on the doorstep and crying if I wasn't allowed to go to cricket with my dad at the weekend and not wanting to come back inside. And so I think it was somehow in me very, very, very young. And I had a close relationship with both my parents, but particularly it became very close with my dad through cricket. And I suppose like lots of lucky young children, or children who are lucky, I grew up really at our local cricket club, which was sort of this idyllic location in the South Downs called Preston Nomads Cricket Club. And I really did grow up there and had really lovely experiences there as a little girl. Yeah, I just love the sport, and it was something that I knew I always wanted to do. And I was quite good at squash and hockey, but cricket was definitely my thing, and it was where, even though I was a bit of a freak, I suppose, being the only girl in boys' teams for so long, it was where I felt comfortable and normal, and oddly, there's a real contradiction there, but it was where I felt at home, and it was where I felt I could really kind of express myself and thrive.
And you played for a while for the boys' team, the men's team at Brighton College. So how was that received? How were you received by them as players and also by parents and so on? Because sometimes we hear a negative side of girls playing football and so on within boys' teams. Did you ever experience that at all?
No, not really. I think it was difficult sometimes for my mum watching and being the mum of the only girl in the match and hearing some comments that I was odd, or who's brought this girl up, and she must, gosh, what were her parents like? My poor mum had to listen to that. Yeah, and also if I got when I got wickets, so when I got the wickets of their sons, I think she heard some not very nice comments, but I don't think it bothered her too much. In terms of how the other players accepted me, I think, when you grow up in one place and you grow up in a cricket club and in a team in a school on that circuit of club cricket and schools cricket, you essentially come up against the same people year after year, and you're playing essentially with the same group of teammates from the age of 7 to 17, which was, or 8 to 17. So I think at first it was abnormal and unusual, and it was a bit of I was the sort of the novelty factor within our team, but I think soon people became used to it, and like anything, once you prove yourself and that you're there on merit and that you're not a PR stunt or whatever, then you are accepted. I think it was difficult when when the boys at Brighton College, as I suppose when I got to sort of 15 or 16, probably 14 or 15, and the boys became sometimes a lot stronger and a lot more physical. That's when where I suppose I felt really tested. But I was accepted, considering it was so unusual. I was completely accepted. And when I look back on those times, I don't, even though, when I look at it rationally, it was odd, I didn't feel at all odd there. No, and I suppose I'm so lucky, because that won't be a common experience, I'm sure, or a shared experience with other girls or boys in similar kind of gender imbalanced environments. But I think that probably the love and support of my family and this real unbelievable support of the cricket coaches that I had around me just goes to show that is such a truism, that family and coaches and teachers are so important in young people's lives for making them feel that they can spread their wings and really thrive at something, and absolutely do whatever they want to do.
And you were just a teenager, so your first one-day international in 1995 was that, I think. So how can you remember the time and how that felt, walking out representing your country?
Yeah, it was all quite sudden, really. Like I say, I went from essentially sort of only discovering girls' county cricket and girls' club cricket to within probably 3 or 4 years making my England debut. So it was and with all the other stuff that was going on in my life as a teenager and doing GCSEs and A-levels and playing loads of sport at school, it was and starting university. So I started university in 1995, and I'd had a gap year in 94 and travelled to Zimbabwe and done some teaching there, and it was such an exciting time, and I was very proud. I missed when I got picked. I was due to go on a family holiday to Spain, which I had to miss because of being picked for England. So
I'm forgiven now.
That holiday that you missed. Yeah, okay. I think the big moment was starting university in the September 95, going up to Manchester to read English. So I just turned 19, and I got picked to go to India in the November-December. So it meant missing half of my first term at university, and it was a long tour. It was a very unusual tour because it was 3 test matches and 5 one-day internationals, which hasn't been heard of since, I don't think, in terms of duration. And it was our first major series or competition since England had won that World Cup in 93 that I wasn't part of. It was the first time that an England women, as world champions, went on a big tour. So to be picked for that and for it to be in India was just overwhelming. I did my first 6 or 7 weeks at university, made some friends, said goodbye to those friends. Luckily, some of them stayed my friends, and went off on that trip. And it was at a time when women's cricket in India, sometimes we had 20,000 people watching us, sometimes we had 20 people watching us, and it was really, we travelled all over India. It was such an amazing life experience as well as a cricket experience. I was trying to do a bit of studying whilst I was there.
How did you balance that education with playing then?
Well, so I missed that first half a term and it was like that actually for the rest of uni, and it was just a case, I suppose, of like, anyone who, I suppose, who has to balance
education,
you have to be disciplined, and you have to, focus on what you need, what's ahead of you, whether that was cricket at a certain time or studying. And I had good support from Manchester University, and I managed to make it work.
And the setup and support for the women's game has massively evolved over those 25 years. So what do you feel the key differences of a young English cricketer in the 90s versus the girls that are coming to play maybe for the first time now?
Oh gosh, well that's a kind of book in itself, I think. I mean, there is very little that's the same. I mean, it's a bat and a ball, and it's 22 yards, and it's, essentially the same laws and the same contest between bat and ball. But the cricket environment I grew up in, the women's and girls cricket environment that I grew up in the mid to late 90s, compared with now. I mean, firstly, I think the most important or the biggest difference is the visibility of women in cricket and women's sport more generically. I think the profile, we've all seen what's happened in the last decade, certainly since, I think, London 2012, with the profile and visibility of female athletes in individual sports and team sports really increasing, and everything that comes with that. So support, coaching support, science and medicine support, financial support, commercial support, the support of your national governing body, and a real drive to, that so many people are making such a massive contribution for women and girls to feel as welcome in sport. I think my experiences were very non-typical. I say that, I mean, lots of girls had to find their way into cricket through playing cricket with boys and men, obviously, back then. But I think where I was lucky was at every stage, I had unbelievable support and acceptance around me. And I don't think that will have been the common story over the last 20 to 30 years. But thankfully now, girls and women can see a place for them in sport, and that's on and off the pitch. We've got so much more still to do in terms of that kind of gender shift, coaching and volunteering and officiating and the running of sport. But certainly the last 10 years have been game-changing, haven't they?
They have indeed. And do you think the players at the time felt they wanted to be, or they should have been, better supported?
I'm asked all the time, well, Claire, are you jealous of what the players have now? And I frankly, and I talk to other players from my generation, and Charlotte Edwards would be one, and she has transcended both the fully amateur and the fully professional eras. But I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, yes, I would have been curious to see what it would have been like to be a completely professional cricketer and for that to be my sole focus. But I had 10 amazing years playing cricket for England, combining it with teaching. I learnt such a lot about myself in that time and how to manage myself and my goals. And I travelled the world. I had 3 or 4 tours to India. I went to Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. I didn't ever think, someone should be doing more for me, pay me, or, put me in that part of the plane to fly to Australia, or, why am I staying? Crikey, some of the accommodation we stayed in on that first tour of India was appalling. Some of us got so sick. It was mosquito ridden. There wasn't running water sometimes. I mean, it was in no way fit by standards now to send an international team to. But that, it's part of the stories that you can tell, isn't it? And those experiences shape you and provide you with certainly some resilience and bring you close to your teammates and make you teach you that life doesn't always go your way. And so, no, I never once thought the game or anyone should be doing more for me, but I do look at what there is available now to girls choosing sports, whatever that might, and I think, wow, there's never been a better time to be starting out as a young athlete.
And you were captain at just 24?
Yes.
So what kind of leader were you?
Oh, I think I was very different to how I would be now. There's no doubt about that. That's my next
question, actually.
There's no doubt about that. I was thrust into the role. I'm not saying I didn't want it. I really did want it. But at a very, very turbulent time, midway through a tour. So we'd been hammered in Australia 5-0. We were quite a fragmented group. and we were to go on to New Zealand and play for another 3 weeks, and I was made captain midway through. And I took the captaincy on from someone who was a legend of the women's game, Karen Smithies, who'd been captain for nearly 10 years. So there'd been real consistency. She'd led England to that World Cup win in '93. So I had big shoes to fill and a big job to do, because we weren't in a great place. We weren't playing well, and we didn't have any kind of harmony on or off the pitch really as a group. So it was a baptism of fire for sure, but one which I certainly something I wanted to take on. I'd always been captain of teams. I'd captained my boys under 10 prep school team to an unbeaten season. I can remember the final game, beating St Christopher's to secure an unbeaten season.
Stays with you forever.
Stays with you. And I'd always captained Sussex. I captained Sussex for about a decade, I think. And so captaincy sat comfortably with me, but I was very inexperienced in kind of, I wasn't inexperienced in captaincy, but I was a young leader. I had some very strong personalities in that squad that I was to captain, and as I say, it wasn't a smooth period, but I learned a huge amount. What sort of captain was I? Certainly very heart on my sleeve. I was very open, perhaps too open at times. I got better at collaborating, I think probably because of the situation I found myself in, and because I was young and confident. I was perhaps a bit too, not self-assured, or maybe I thought I had all the answers, or that I needed to have, because I'd been given that responsibility, so I had to have all the answers. And of course you don't. That's what you learn about leadership, isn't it? One thing I didn't do enough of that I've learned, I think if it was one lesson, it would be to tolerate and respect the difference in people and not expect everyone to be like you. And as a young, confident leader, I think I thought that everyone should be like me, as in, I believe we should review the game straight after the match, even though everyone's really emotional. And if I believe that, then everyone should believe that. And if you don't believe that, then obviously you don't care as much. I can remember thinking and feeling things like that. And actually, that's nonsense. As you grow, don't you? You learn about the difference in personality types and responses.
Do you get any coaching or support on being a captain?
Not really. Some informal bits and pieces. Nothing. No sort of mentoring or any sort of structured support. I've learned that leadership is, yes, you have to be able to take a decision in the moment, and obviously in sport more so than in, say, the corporate world or the world I'm in now in terms of administration. The buck does stop with you, and you have to make a call on the pitch, and you have to back yourself and be confident. I could have collaborated a lot more, and I could have licened a lot better.
As you say, it's all the leadership principles, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it's been it is. You don't know everything, can't be expected to. Responsibility, having a position of responsibility doesn't equal you must know all the answers yourself. You have to find ways of seeking them out and working out who you can confide in, and understanding that everyone is different, and that's part of the beauty of it all, and that's what makes great teams. And that conformity doesn't, it's diversity, isn't it? It's what we know, it's what we talk about all the time, that diverse teams full of diverse voices and difference is a really healthy thing.
So after a decade of playing for England and 6 years as a captain and winning the Ashes and so on, you chose to retire 2005. But was that a very difficult decision for you to make at the time?
It was a very, very difficult decision, and I can remember sitting and crying a lot with my mum and dad as I wrestled with it. Oh, getting emotional now.
Oh, because you didn't feel you were...
Oh, no, that was it. I knew it was the right time. I knew that Charlotte Edwards was chomping at the bit, having been my vice-captain for 5 years or so. I knew that my body and my physical and my emotional well-being was a little precarious. I'd invested a huge amount of myself into being captain of England. I had nothing really left to give, and I needed an operation on my ankle. That was a less relevant probably, and that would take me out for a little while. And I was so privileged that I was able to make that decision myself. No one made it for me, because I think that's one of the saddest things, when you don't have the chance to own your decision to depart from something that's been as important to you as that. And I was going out at a real high. You know, we'd got the Ashes back from Australia after 42 years. And I've thought about it so hard, and I thought the team are so ready for a new voice. But it was really difficult because I had all of that logic, but I knew that letting it go would be very difficult because of the emotional investment. On the one hand, it was an easy, obvious, sensible, rational and the right time for all the logical and rational reasons. But emotionally, it was just I had to get there and had to sweat it out and cry it out a bit with friends and family. But it was 100%, and I really am so lucky that I don't have any regret about that decision. The timing was right for me and the team, and the team is the most important thing. And Charlotte Edwards, obviously flew as England captain.
Do you think it would have been a harder decision had you been contracted players there, and it had been more of a career? Might you have done another?
Yeah, maybe, and I do feel, that is all part of how this transition. It's been a few years now, but I'm seeing that with our players. Their finance and earning a living complicates matters, and is another key ingredient in your decision making. Again, I didn't have that complication or luxury, or however you want to put it. I was also very lucky, and I had a very good job to go to, and I had always managed to combine the teaching with playing cricket for England. And I had dabbled in some media as well, and done a bit of TV and a little bit of writing. So I had some options, and so I didn't have that the financial pressure of it being my job and a contract that I'll just try and eke out a bit longer. And I do really, I'm very sensitive to that with our players now, because, some of them are on 1 year central contracts, some are on 2 year central contracts. And, I'm sensitive when those renewal times come up, and that it's a real concern. It's now their job and their livelihood, and they've got mortgages that depend upon it. So it is a very different time.
And did you ever envisage a role in cricket, working cricket, when you left playing?
No, I genuinely didn't. I'd done my what would now be level 3 coaching award. I did that probably in my mid to late 20s. So I had that, and I enjoyed coaching. But the other love of my life, other than cricket, was teaching and teaching English, and so I just had quite a sort of a clear view of things, that when I stopped playing cricket for England, then my future would be in teaching. And that's how I set up. I retired, and I set about retirement from international cricket. I was back in teaching, having had a sabbatical. In my last 2 years, I did have a small taste of being a full-time cricketer, because I had a sabbatical from teaching for my last 2 years playing for England. But anyway, I didn't see myself going into cricket administration or sports administration. I really thought my future would stay in teaching. So I'd been back in teaching for about 1.5 years or 2 years. And Hugh Morris, who was the then managing director of England Cricket, I'd had a close working relationship with him as England captain, and he contacted me about a role. It wasn't anywhere near anything like what my current role is now, but essentially it's evolved from there.
Out of the blue? Was that
completely out of the blue. I was just visiting friends in Lincolnshire. I can remember it really clearly. And he told me about so Jill McConway, who was the national manager, head of women's cricket, I don't remember her exact title. She was retiring and going to live back in New Zealand, and they had decided to create a new role, a slightly different role with her retirement, and he wanted to talk to me about it. And so we talked about it, and we met, and it was clear that it was going to have a real focus on development and much more on the recreational game. And I said to Hugh, that's not where my skills will be. I don't think I'm cut out for that, and it doesn't feel quite right. Anyway, to fast forward a few weeks, they decided to create 2 new roles. Okay. So one was essentially a national participation lead, and one was what I took, which was the head of the England women's game and the talent system. So and building that from scratch, and building the kind of infrastructure around England and coaching and science and medicine and all of that provision, and working with our National Cricket Centre up at Loughborough. And I can remember coming to my job. I came with my mum and I walked down from St John's Wood Tube Station, and my interview was at 2:30 or whatever it was, and we stopped at Café Rouge on the corner, which has gone now, replaced by the Ivy Cafe, and we had a croque monsieur, and I sat with my mum, who decided just to come with me for the trip, and I said, I can't do it, Mum. What am I doing? I wouldn't even know where to start with a job like this. Oh, wow. And she said, you can stop that nonsense as soon as you like. You go for it, and you put your best foot forward and see how you feel at the end of it. And if they offer it to you and you don't want it, you don't have to take it. You've got a lovely job in teaching. But yeah, Hugh Morris did a good job, and gosh, I wouldn't change a thing, because it's been an amazing 10 years here.
And looking across those 10 years, what are the achievements that there's so many, so much change has occurred, but what are the achievements that you're most proud of, do you feel?
Well, I think a couple. So one would be, right up there would be these getting central contracts approved for 20 or so women, for this to be their sole focus. And I think, that enables you to make such a step change in performance and in working with that group of players. And alongside that moment was the first standalone commercial deal for women's cricket with Kia. Yeah. And they've been such lovely partners, so much more than a sponsor. They've been with us every step of the way since central contracts about 5 years ago, and then with the Kia Super League. Yeah. So they've been brilliant to work with, and it has felt like a real partnership. From an ECB and an ICC perspective, so with my ICC Women's Chair hat on, would be getting the ICC Women's Championship approved, which has enabled the top 8 teams in the world to all have an equal share of international cricket, rather than it being dominated by England, Australia, India, or whatever, and having a really meritocratic, equal route through to World Cup qualification. So we started that in 2013-14, ahead of the 2017 Women's World Cup here, and which we're now 60 or 70% of the way through in its second edition, ahead of the 2021 World Cup in New Zealand. And I think that was a key moment for the women's game globally, yeah, in terms of everyone being able to understand, and the less well-funded women's nations being able to get extra funding to be able to develop. And with that, the reason that's been so important is that with that commitment to scheduling and commitment that all of the boards have had to make, those top 8 boards have had to make, has come, obviously, because of that commitment, has come more investment and more contracts for more women around the world. And I think we needed that to be able to say, right, this is the route to the World Cup, and if we're to make that as competitive as possible, then we need as many players around the world to be full-time as possible. And then I think the other big development was the Kia Super League. I can remember getting approval at the board. I can remember Rachel Hayhoe-Flint, obviously, who's not with us now, and her support and challenge in board meetings. It took 2 or 3 board meetings to get the Kia Super League approved. And I think that I'm proud of that, because it's changed the game. It came up with new ways of working, and counties working together. For example, the Western Storm with Somerset and Gloucestershire working together, or Hampshire and Sussex with the Southern Vipers. And it created new collaborative ways of working for a greater good. And obviously, as we know in sport, sometimes the politics of local interests can become so paralysing for other things that sometimes innovation gets stifled, or relationships are difficult because of local interests. And I think everyone approached the Kia Super League with a really unselfish, non-parochial mindset, and something really good came out of that. I think that's been a really interesting test case for cricket in how you don't have to stick to county boundaries. You can do things differently and take the game on. Yeah, and that's as and that's linked, isn't it, to the fact that essentially cricket has been a men's game in the main, set up for men, with all the structures around it, have been about men's cricket and professional men's cricket. And I suppose my whole time here has been about finding ways to change that.
How have you dealt with those challenges of being in such a male-dominated sport?
I think, it's a really good question. I think I had an advantage because, and it shouldn't be this way, but this is how sport works, and maybe other industries, I had an advantage because I'd played at the highest level.
I was going to ask you if you hadn't played and had come in as a woman, would you?
Well, hard to know.
Cricket fan or
really hard to know. I think I only know what I know, and I think being a successful England captain, you steal a march, and you've got 20% extra respect or credibility. I don't know this, but I'm guessing I did. It felt that way anyway. And it shouldn't be that way, because just because you've played and captained your country or a team at a high level doesn't make you a good cricket administrator. But it does give you, I suppose, interesting and valuable insights and experiences, and certainly I tried to put those to good use. I think, it's not easy. I think you learn a lot about yourself, like any job, but particularly when I think it leads to quite a lot of analysis about your character and, okay, how am I going to approach, I might feel so angry or so emotional about something. And I'm not saying that can't happen in other environments, and regardless of gender, but it's just been fascinating to reflect on how you do handle situations. And I think one thing is certainly presenting to the board, when the board used to be virtually all male, and sort of presiding over a very male sport, which thankfully has changed beyond recognition now, and is set to change even more with our strategy over the next 5 years, and the level of investment coming into the women's and girls' game from next year. But I think it's understanding, recognising that you've got to be really well prepared. You find a way, I think, to manage I think sometimes showing, like anything, sometimes showing some emotion is good and sometimes it isn't. I think you learn about how to let that manifest and when to try and suppress it. I think you learn when you need to be patient and when something just isn't acceptable. So there are times when, patience and the long game is what you're playing, and there are some times when, no, this isn't okay, and you can't let something go. So it's working out, I suppose, how militant's the wrong word, but how strong a position to take. And I suppose those are all lessons that everyone learns in whatever field or environment you're in. But I think when you're in a world where there is such a disparity between in gender, and when you are trying to really change our sport to make it more inclusive, and so that every woman and girl can see herself in it, that doesn't happen overnight. And so it's working out, I suppose, the pace at which you can move and influence. And, I was probably very slow to understand the politics and everywhere's got politics, hasn't it? So any advice to anyone listening would be try and understand the politics, and what have you got to accept? What can you work with? What do you try and influence? Where does it become a waste of energy? I've been lucky. I don't think I've had enemies, but I've certainly had, working out how to get round some opposition. Yeah. What are the skills you need to call upon? And I was asked a really interesting question not long ago about, do you work out when to use your femininity? And that's an interesting one, because your immediate reaction to that is, well, no, I've never thought it. But we all know that whether you're male or female, you have to be charming.
You've got to be different people.
You've got to be different people in different places, to a degree.
And I guess I can't really interview and not talk about the World Cup and that amazing win. I was fortunate enough to be here that day for all that noise, and it was an amazing atmosphere, wasn't there? When you went into that championship, did you feel that England could win or were likely to?
Definitely not likely to. I think you always have to have a belief that you can, I suppose, get to the final. We'd gone through a lot of change. We'd only had a new captain for a year, Heather Knight, after a decade of Charlotte Edwards at the helm. So we had a new captain who hadn't gone through anything like that before, that sort of profile or pressure. Our head coach had come from professional men's cricket, had only been in the women's game just over a year. We had lost some other senior players quite recently. So we were sort of in flux. If you were to define how you need to be to go into a World Cup and describe it, and how consistent or settled you need to be as a unit, and with your leadership in place, and the right blend of, you have to have some players who carried a few scars, and you have to have some who are fearless and don't understand what the hurt can feel like from defeat. And I think we did in the end have I didn't know it at the time, but in the end I think it worked out that we did have the right mix. I thought it was possibly a year too soon for us for all those reasons, but crikey, we lost that first game to India, and then just didn't look back and got stronger, and physically and mentally we were strong, and our medical team did such an amazing job. We had a squad of 15 players, and we only, in a really intense schedule of high pressure cricket with a lot of travel and a volume of cricket, we only needed to use 13 players. So our medical team did an amazing job. Our head coach, Mark Robinson, was incredible. Heather Knight proved just every game just showed something more amazing as a young leader. And obviously key players, stood up at different times, whether that was Tammy Beaumont or Sarah Taylor or Catherine Brunt or Anya Shrubsole. Or Nat Siver, amazing, really came into her own as one of the world's best all-rounders. So, to go through that and to end up in front of a full house at Lord's, and the ICC and Lord's had sold Lord's out before we even knew we were in the final, which to me is just shows the power of a home event, and the sort of the hopes of a nation hoping that you're in that final, perhaps. We snatched victory from the jaws of defeat, essentially, and I think, you asked me I didn't even mention it when you said, what are you most proud of? That, without doubt, as a moment. And I was able to watch the last 40 minutes or so. I'd done sort of official duties and a bit of hosting and hospitality, and been to the pavilion, been to the media centre, and been around and thanked people and seen people. And I had the last 40 minutes up in the tavern stand watching with my dad and brother.
Let's say, what a 40 minutes.
And my best friend from university. And went through every emotion. And it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And I'd never thought I would see a day like that.
I guess moving on to the Ashes this summer, and not the result that anybody wanted, those players and the support staff team. Do you feel there's a positive coming out of that in terms of, you alluded to the strategy, the new strategy moving forward, but where the women's game is going now? Do we need to have that disappointment this summer to know what we need to invest in?
Well, I think all these are all such sort of speculative conversations, aren't they, that we always have in sport, and you always know things with hindsight, and
it's a fabulous thing.
Yeah, it is. And I think it showed us a few things that are uncontestable, that Australia and whether their performance in that 2017 World Cup was their moment. Because they didn't make the final and they underperformed. But certainly this Ashes series showed us that Australia have widened the gap. Now, whether that's because some of our players and our team performance has stood still, or whether we've moved at an okay pace, but they've flown in the last couple of years. Either way, something has to happen. And, fortunately, over the last year, prior to that defeat, we have been writing a new strategy to, as we're saying in our strategy called Inspiring Generations, our focus is on transforming the game for women and girls. And we've got some big, expensive and ambitious plans over the next couple of years at all levels of the game, whether it's clubs and facilities, or whether it's girls' county age group pathways, local pathways, or our new semi-pro domestic structure, and doubling the number of women who can earn a living from the game in the next 2 or 3 years. We were writing those plans, and I suppose the Ashes defeat has shown that we need those plans more than ever, and we need the investment and the focus that the game and the organisation is going to give to the women's game. So that's the good news. The defeat was obviously a huge blow. Certain players, lots of players, will be really disappointed with their performance. So it is such a great test, that multi-format series, and it's brutal because if you lose those first 2 one-day internationals and there's only 3 to play, and then you're straight into a test match with so much riding on it, and we play so little test cricket, it is a real test for those players, for their character and their skills and their resilience, really. So it was a very disappointing series. Fair play to Australia for how they outperformed us, and it just gives, I suppose, the good thing to come out of defeat is that it refocuses. That sounds bad because it sounds like we all needed a refocus, but it just sharpens your focus, I think, and it's a test for us all. It tests our resolve, and it tests, okay, well, what do we want to do about that, and how serious are we about the plans for the next phase of the women's game.
And hugely positive last week with the Commonwealth Games 2020 announcing that the women's really so much that will be included in Birmingham. What impact do you feel that could have on the women's game and profile? It's very exciting.
Potentially, Sue, even a bigger impact than winning a World Cup, I think, because the World Cup is your pinnacle event in your sport, but I think multi-sport games, like the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics, they sort of transcend that. And we see, don't we, different sports getting, these huge new reach, new audience, new following. And I guess the challenge is making that endure past the games themselves. It's the first time women's cricket's ever been in a multi-sport games. Men's cricket was in the Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur in 1998 and not once since then. So it's a huge opportunity. I think cricket is the true sport of the Commonwealth. When you think of the likes of India and Pakistan and South Africa, and the prominent teams as well in women's cricket align really nicely to the big Commonwealth countries. And we're there on our own right. We're not an add-on to a men's tournament. And I think that gives us a really unique opportunity that women's cricket probably hasn't had before, because it'll be free-to-air television coverage in our time zone, in our country. We won't go into it necessarily as world champions because we've got the World Cup in New Zealand just the year before it. But to be able to go into a home games and compete on a different platform, really, and hopefully to lots and lots of millions, thousands and millions of new potential fans, and to show girls that's another really enticing or attractive thing about our sport, that we've got that opportunity to be part of a games aside from our normal cricket calendar. Really excited about that.
And I'm assuming you were very involved in not making it happen, but in the bid and stuff.
Yeah, it's been a joint. Well, I think the main credit, if you like, must go to ICC, because they've been working with the Commonwealth Games Federation for the last probably 2.5 years, and then ECB got involved, I suppose, in the last 3 or 4 months of 2018. So we then joined forces from a logistics and pulling the bid together, and that was very much led by ECB and ICC jointly, with obviously us, and then some key folk from ICC from Dubai came over, and we presented to the Birmingham 2022 panel up in Birmingham, and that was a joint ECB ICC panel presenting. So it's been a really lovely project, and one that we've really all enjoyed working on, because we had a very tight timeline. It was during the Women's T20 World Cup as well in the Caribbean at the time, and so we were all involved in that, and it was one of those kind of projects that I think you make a few friends for life in those situations, because you're really reliant on everyone pulling their weight, a little team. And we were all on different time zones. We had the Dubai people, and some of us were out in Antigua at the World Cup, and people here in the office in London. So, but we got it over the line, and really looking forward to that.
Last year, you sort of ruled out interest in applying for that role within the men's game. And I think at the time...
Ruled it out.
Sorry. Yes, you ruled it out. I think you said that you felt the women's game was really on the eve of something very special. I think talking to you, we can hear all that's happening at the time, we didn't maybe know about the strategy and all that was coming there. So in the future, do you think you would wish to work across the male and female sports?
I'm not sure. I think I would just have to see kind of how I felt at the time, really. I think I have given it lots of thought, and I being completely honest, I think my identity is very sort of tied up in this role, and that's, in many ways, that's really good, and in some ways maybe not so good. It means, I think taking on this new role that I've taken on since the start of this year. So my role for a period was Director of England Women's Cricket, and now my role is Managing Director Women's Cricket. So it's a much broader role, in line with the strategy and in line with our ambition to transform the game for women and girls at all levels. So I feel that's certainly a sort of a new lease of life and a really new, much bigger challenge with, I can't even work out the percentage increase in budget, but the board have approved £20 million to this area of the strategy in the next 2 years, with a view to, if all goes well, and with a view to that becoming 50 million over the period of the strategy, so over 2020 to 2024. So, I've got this huge sense of responsibility, new responsibility to make that investment pay dividends for women and girls at all levels. And I have been historically very focused on the elite end, and maybe to the depth, as an organisation, we have kind of nailed our investment and our approach very much around England Women and the Kia Super League, and building that infrastructure around high performance. And I think it would be fair criticism to say that we haven't spent as much time on the grassroots of the game and the pathway and schools and clubs. And so I've got now the opportunity to make sure that we do that, and we'll be reorganising ourselves structurally in terms of people to match the investment and the strategy to do that. I suppose at the moment I feel that I've got a big new opportunity in the women's game, but which is a core. It's a 1/6. We've got 6 core pillars in the new strategy, and it's one of those 6. So, for the moment, to answer your question, I still feel hugely committed to making the game as good as it can be and as inclusive as it can be for women and girls. If other roles appear down the line, which are in men's sport, men's cricket, men's sport more widely, or both, then I'm certainly open to them. But I just think whilst this is such a monumentally exciting time for women in sport, and particularly cricket, with this opportunity, then certainly my commitment and my focus will be here for the next couple of years, I think.
And there's sometimes an assumption, isn't there, that working in men's sport is that pinnacle for the professional in our sector. Do you feel that's the case?
Definitely not. No, and I've challenged myself a lot on this. Yes, it's more in the spotlight, more money attached to it, more commercial, maybe commercial becoming to work with bigger budgets and more profile, and to be the bigger brother. But if you challenge yourself on why you go to work, and at the moment, do I think I could make a difference or get the fulfillment or find the same meaning in men's sport? At the moment, I don't think that I could. I'm not saying that wouldn't be the case in the future, or a different role wouldn't present that. But I think women's sport is where to be, is where you can find all of that, because women's sport collectively, not just women's cricket, is on the eve of such a game-changing time, and to be part of that, and to be really part of making sport more visible, more accessible for 51% of our population, who previously have never seen themselves as having that opportunity or right or access. I think that we need to flip that debate. I wholeheartedly disagree with that mentality that it's somehow better to be working in men's sport. Surely it's better to be working where you feel, where can I make the most difference and try and make the most impact and take something forward. And at the moment, that's in women's sport. What an extraordinary woman. I'm so grateful for Clare's honesty
In sharing her thoughts with me, you can just feel her passion for transforming women's sport. Please let me know what you think about the Game Changers podcast. You can leave a review and give us a rating on Apple Podcasts, or message me on social media at Sue Anstis. If you could spread the word about the Game Changers podcast across your own networks too, that would be brilliant. And why not encourage your family, colleagues and friends to listen? To make sure you don't miss out on future episodes, please subscribe to the Game Changers, and you can find out more about all my guests from Series 1 and 2 at promotepr.com/gamechangers. Next week, I'm talking to Anna Kessel, MBE, from The Telegraph, the first ever women's sports editor at a national newspaper, the co-founder of Women in Football, and the author of one of my all-time favourite books, Eat, Sweat, Play. Anna talks openly about the sexism faced by females working in sport, why the profile of female sport matters so much for women and men, and how things are changing for the better.
I just think if you grow up as a girl, it's almost like there's a room in your house where you're not allowed to go in. That's how I see sport in life. And I think we cannot live a whole and complete life. We cannot really play a full role in society as long as that's the case.